Throughout human history, courage, ambition, and luck have triggered the most remarkable rises to power from very humble beginnings. Here is a list of 10 people who shattered the chains of serfdom and ascended the thrones of great kingdoms and empires. Number 10. Diocletian. Diocletian was born around the year 244 AD in the Roman province of Dalmatia in present-day Croatia. Diocletian was born to a family of slaves. The details of his early life are unclear, and the circumstances under which his family gained freedom from slavery are obscure. However, historians speculate that it was the doing of a senator called Anulinus, for whom Diocletian's father later worked as a scribe. The young Diocletian enrolled in the Roman army, where he served in Gaul and was later made commander of the lower Danube forces. In the year 282, he was made commander of the elite cavalry forces, reporting directly to the imperial household. A year later, he was appointed consul by Emperor Carus. In the same year, Diocletian took part in Carus's Persian campaign, during which Emperor Carus died under mysterious circumstances amid a successful war with Persia. The emperor's sons, Carinus and Numerian, were named co-heirs. Carinus quickly left his post in Gaul, returned to Rome, and became emperor of the Western Empire. Numerian withdrew from Syria and continued his campaign in the east. He suffered from a sudden eye inflammation. When he reached Bithynia in present-day Turkey, some of his soldiers smelled an odor emanating from his coach. When they opened the curtains, they found his body in a decomposing state. It is believed that Numerian was assassinated. A succession council was summoned, and Diocletian was proclaimed emperor of the Eastern Empire. Diocletian refused to accept second-tier emperor status to Carinus, the emperor of the Western Empire. Fortunately for Diocletian, Carinus had become a cruel and oppressive tyrant in the West. He had lost popularity with the elite class and is said to have seduced many of his officers' wives. Diocletian advanced west across the Balkans. In the spring of 285, his armies met with Carinus's across the River Magnus in present-day Serbia. Many of Carinus's prefects defected to Diocletian's side, and Carinus was killed in battle by his own men. Both the Western and the Eastern armies acclaimed Diocletian as Emperor of Rome. Number 9. King Jaja of Opobo. Jaja was born in Umuduruoha in present-day Imo State in eastern Nigeria in the year 1820. Around the age of 12, he was taken as a slave by Obua Ojukwa, a tribal warlord from Bony in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. Finding Jaja too stubborn for their liking, his slave masters made a gift of him to Chief Madu, the leader of the Anya royal household. Anya was one of the two royal families in the region, the other being the Manila Pepple House. As an imported slave, Jaja was in the lowest category in the Bony slave society, vis-a-vis other slaves born in Delta the region. At this time, the Bony society was governed by administrative and trading institutions known as canoe houses. A canoe house would comprise the merchant, i.e. the founder, his direct and extended family relatives, and his slaves. A flourishing canoe house could have over 1,000 members. The two royal households were canoe houses, but not all canoe houses were royal families. The competition between the canoe houses was fierce. To survive the competition, it was necessary for succession to be by merit and not by birthright, meaning even a lowborn with a proven success record could one day be entrusted with the house's leadership, but cannot be king. Wealth was, therefore, the most essential criteria to power in Bony. Sometime later, Chief Madu died and was succeeded by his son Alali as the head of the Anya house. Young Jaja worked as a paddler in the merchant canoes of Anya. He traveled to inland markets to source raw materials for European traders on the coast. It wasn't customary for slaves of his status to leave the paddles and be directly involved in trading, but Jaja's talent, enthusiasm, and charisma could not be easily contained. With the few opportunities he had, he demonstrated exceptional trading and interpersonal skills, won the hearts of local tradesmen, and started catching European supercargo's attention. Over time, Jaja gradually accumulated wealth through trade. In 1863, Alali, the head of the Anya house, died, leaving an enormous debt of 13,000 sterling pounds owed to European supercargoes, which by covenant had to be settled by his successor. With bankruptcy looming, all the eligible chiefs of the royal bloodline declined the nomination to succession. When Jaja agreed to fill the void, it was a great relief to the entire house. Jaja leveraged his acquaintances with the European trading communities and his knowledge of the palm oil markets in the interior to set the Anya house to recovery. Within 2 years, he had settled the frightening debt left behind by his predecessor. He started acquiring other insolvent houses and absorbed them into the Anya house. The Anya house grew to an unprecedented size, overshadowing its rival Manila house, and grossly dominated the political scene. Jaja was the head of the Anya house and the most influential figure in Bony, but could never be king. The aristocratic class in Bony always reminded him of his slave roots. In 1870, he founded an independent settlement. He named it Opobo after Opobo the Great, the illustrious King of Bony and founder of the Anya house. Of the 18 houses in Bony, 14 followed Jaja to Opobo. Many trading stations and British merchants also relocated to Opobo. This marked the fall of Bony. In 1873, England recognized Jaja as King of Opobo. Jaja guarded his indigenous sovereignty jealously. However, in 1884, he was forced by British consul Hewitt to sign a protectorate treaty with England. When Jaja resisted, Hewitt stated, quote-unquote, "The Queen does not want to take your country, but at the same time, she doesn't want another European nation to take it." Jaja believed him and signed it. Little did he know that this would mark the beginning of the annexation of Nigeria by England and the end of the sovereignty of Opobo. Number 8. Justin I. Justin was born in February 450 to a peasant family in Baderiana, a city in present-day Turkey. He worked as a swinehead in his teenage years. When barbarians invaded their city, he fled with 2 of his companions to Constantinople, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. Though they were illiterate and dressed in tattered clothes, they arrived just when the capital was facing severe Persian invasion threats and badly needed to reinforce the imperial guards. Justin joined the Executors, a newly formed elite squad that acted as the main imperial bodyguard. Thanks to his bravery, he held several positions in the squad. He was ultimately made the commander of the palace guard by Emperor Anastasius I. On the night of July 8, 518, Emperor Anastasius summoned Justin and Kaler, the chief of staff, to his deathbed. He charged them to oversee the election of a new emperor. The most viable candidates were Flavius Paulus, the dead emperor's brother who had served as consul, and Theocritus, who commanded a much larger military unit than Justin's elite squad. Theocritus also had the endorsement of Amanatius, a wealthy and influential palace official. Theocritus and Amanatius relied on their control of money and a larger army and didn't see Justin as an obstacle. As a result, Amanatius handed huge sums of money to Justin to buy support for Theocritus from the electoral council members. Justin used the money to buy support for himself and was elected emperor on July 10, 518 as Justin I. Number 7. Basil I. Basil was born in the year 811 to peasant parents in Macedonia. At a young age, his parents were captured and taken to Bulgaria, where he lived until 836. Basil fled from captivity and sought refuge in Thrace, then part of the Eastern Roman Empire. He was lucky to get into the service of a relative of Emperor Michael III. Basil was a skilled horse tamer and a wrestling champion. During his time in service of the emperor's relative, he defeated the Bulgarian wrestling champion, thereby catching the emperor's attention. Emperor Michael appointed Basil his personal bodyguard and confidant. Basil continued to gain imperial favors, and in 865, the emperor ordered Basil to marry Eudokia in Gerina, the emperor's favorite mistress. A year later, during a crusade against the Arabs, Basil convinced the emperor that his uncle Badas was planning to seize the throne. As a result, Badas was killed on imperial orders. With Badas out of the picture, Basil filled the vacant position of Caesar and was later crowned co-emperor on May 26, 866. Basil became the second most influential personality in the empire. Shortly after that, Emperor Michael began to find favor with Basiliscianos, another member of his royal court, and promised to bestow imperial titles on him. Basil felt his position was seriously threatened. On the night of September 23, 867, Michael and Basiliscianos were very drunk following a royal banquet. Basil had arranged for the locks to the royal chamber's doors to be tampered with and plotted with the chamberlain not to post any guards that night. Basil then organized a small group of hoodlums who snuck into the royal chambers and put Emperor Michael and his newfound friend Basiliscianos to the sword. Being an already proclaimed co-emperor, Basil automatically assumed the position of emperor. Number 6. Zhu Yuanzhang. Zhu Yuanzhang was born into a desperately poor peasant family in the Huai River Plain in China. Though he had 7 older siblings, most of them were given away because their parents couldn't provide for the family. When Zhu was 16, severe drought ruined the crops and killed every member of his family except for him and one of his siblings. Zhu led the life of a wandering beggar for about 3 years and later joined a monastery of Buddhist monks where he learned to read and write, amongst many other skills. Just at the time when Zhu thought his problems were over, the monastery was destroyed in a rebellion against the invading Mongolian Empire. Filled with frustration, Zhu joined one of the rebel forces that had risen against the Mongolians. His training in the monastery and his craving for revenge propelled him rapidly through the ranks until he became the militia leader. He then gathered other rebel groups under his leadership. He joined forces with an influential religio-political movement known as the White Lotus Society, making Zhu the most prominent opposition against the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty. In 1367, Zhu's forces captured the kingdom of Dazhu, which granted him authority over the Yangtze River region, prompting the other rebel leaders in the area to surrender to him. On January 20th, 1368, Zhu was proclaimed emperor of the Ming dynasty. A year later, he launched a military campaign attacking the patches of territories in northern China, which were still under Mongolian rule. The Mongols were forced to abandon their stronghold at Khanbalik, present-day Beijing, and retreat from the rest of China. China was unified under Zhu's rule. Number 5. Kubtuddin Aybak. Kubtuddin Aybak was born in 1150 to a Turkish family in Central Asia. In his early childhood, he was sold as a slave. He became the possession of a qazi, i.e. a Sharia court judge, in Nishapur in northeastern Iran. The qazi treated Aybak like a son and gave him the same privileges which his own children enjoyed. This made the qazi's sons very jealous. As a result, immediately after the qazi died, his sons took Aybak straight to the slave market. Aybak was sold to another slave master. Going from one slave master to another, Aybak finally became the possession of Sultan Muhammad Ghori, the ruler of Ghor in central Afghanistan. The Sultan had no biological children. Being a military ruler, he had to integrate and rely on his most trusted slaves in his elite squad. The Sultan saw great leadership skills in Aybak. Over the years, he entrusted him with significant military responsibilities until Aybak eventually became his general. Muhammad Ghori was a conqueror sultan. In his expeditions in Central Asia, he commissioned Aybak with the conquest of northern India. Aybak was a ruthless warrior. He crushed every resistance, destroying temples and looting away great wealth. At the peak of his powers, Muhammad Ghori's territory had extended to Pakistan, Afghanistan, and northern India. First, Aybak acted as a receiver general for all the territories captured from Muhammad Ghori. In 1206, when Muhammad Ghori died in battle, Aybak proclaimed himself the new Sultan of Delhi. Number 4. Theodora, the prostitute that became empress. Theodora was born in Constantinople in the year 500. Her father was a bear trainer in the hippodrome, and her mother was a dancer. Around the age of 12, Theodora started work as an actress and prostitute. She would perform on stage in the day and do a night shift in a brothel, providing sexual services to low-status customers. When Theodora was 16, a Syrian official named Hysebulus, who happened to be one of her acquaintances, was appointed governor of the Roman province of Libya. He offered Theodora the position of concubine, which she gladly accepted and followed him to North Africa. At the start, their entanglement was quite rosy, but within 4 years, it had gone sour to the point where Theodora was severely maltreated and abandoned by Hesebelus. On her way back to Constantinople, she stopped at Antioch. She met a dancer named Macedonia, an informant for Justinian, nephew and adopted son of the emperor. When Theodora was introduced to Justinian, he was captivated by her beauty. Unfortunately, a Roman law from the Constantine era prevented men of high rank from marrying women in the lower class. He therefore made her his mistress first, while pleading with his uncle the emperor to repeal the law. 3 years later, the law was repealed and they were married in 525. When the emperor's health began to decline, he named Justinian his successor. When he eventually died, Justinian took the throne. Theodora became empress at the age of 27, 2 years after their marriage. Theodora's role in political affairs was very significant. She received foreign envoys in the emperor's place. Her name was mentioned in nearly all laws passed throughout the empire at the time. During the Nika revolt in January 532, the two major opposition groups formed a coalition against the government and sought to depose the emperor. At the height of the chaos, Justinian's advisors urged him to flee, but Theodora stood her ground. She ordered the imperial guards to charge and slaughter the rioters. An estimated 30,000 rioters were killed, and the city returned to calm. Theodora introduced many reforms about women's rights. She outlawed sex trafficking and strove to abolish prostitution. On one occasion, she rounded up over 500 prostitutes and confined them in a convent. She forbade the death penalty for wives who committed adultery and implemented a death penalty for rape. She introduced many reforms that favored women in the event of divorce and in property ownership. Many scholars believed it was Theodora rather than Justinian who ruled the Eastern Roman Empire. Number 3. Henry Christophe. Henry Christophe was born on the 6th of October 1767 on the island of Grenada. His parents were slaves from West Africa brought in to work in the sugarcane plantations. At a very young age, Henry Christophe was already showing signs of stubbornness and obstinacy. At the age of 10, the slave masters decided to sell Henry to another sugarcane plantation owner in Saint Domingue, present-day Haiti. Christophe witnessed the brutality of French plantation owners against their slaves. This created resentment amongst the slaves towards the plantation owners and set the stage for Christophe's role in the Haitian anti-slavery revolution. Christophe started his military career at age 24 with an epic slave revolt on the island. Christophe fought as a lieutenant under Toussaint Louverture, a Haitian revolutionary leader and former slave. By February 1794, France was forced to abolish slavery on the island, and Louverture, the revolutionary leader, became governor-general. However, in 1802, French troops invaded Haiti to regain French control over the former colony. Louverture was captured, and Christophe offered to surrender only on the promise of pardon and the retention of his military rank in the French army. Shortly after joining the French regiment, the French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte declared his intentions of restoring slavery on the island. This caused Christophe and many other former slaves in the French regiment to desert and to join a new uprising against the French invasion. The uprising was spearheaded by Jean-Jacques Dessalines, a former slave from West Africa. The French were defeated in 1803. On the 27th of November that year, the island was declared an independent republic with the new name Haiti. Dessalines was made president, but was assassinated 3 years later. One of Dessalines' close collaborators, Alexandre Pétion, championed democracy in the south and clashed with Christophe, who had significant influence in the north. When Pétion was elected president, Christophe created a separate government in the north and declared himself president of the north in February 1807. As such, the country was divided between the two. 4 years later, in March 1811, Henry Christophe declared his northern portion a kingdom and proclaimed himself King Henry I of Haiti. Christophe was an unpopular and despotic ruler. In an attempt to revamp the war-torn agricultural sector, he introduced a system of forced labor that wasn't very different from slavery, which Haitians had fought so hard to abolish. Christophe built 8 palaces and multiple chateaux for himself and started a new kind of aristocracy in Haiti. In the Roman emperor's fashion, he minted his portrait on Haitian coins with the inscription Henricis de Gracia Haiti Rex, meaning Henry the Gracious, King of Haiti. Number 2. Ivaylo of Bulgaria. Ivaylo was a peasant farmer in Bulgaria with no land of his own. He raised swine for payment. Ivaylo grew up when Bulgaria was facing economic and social unrest and continuous threat of invasion by the Mongols under Nogai Khan. Since childhood, Ivaylo claimed to have had visions of himself being the liberator who would ride Bulgaria out of its troubles. In the year 1277, Ivaylo took action. He spearheaded a peasant uprising that overpowered the imperial forces and overthrew the government of Constantine I, the Emperor of Bulgaria. Ivaylo is credited with killing the emperor himself. He forced the Bulgarian nobility to acknowledge him as emperor. He legitimized his authority by marrying the widowed empress, Maria Cantacuzena. The marriage was a slap on the face of Bulgarian nobility because not only had the empress married the peasant who murdered her husband, but the former swineherd also proved to be an abusive husband, physically beating a noble woman within a year of their marriage. Therefore, Ivaylo's rule was continuously challenged both from within by the nobles and externally by the Byzantine Empire. Although his reign was short, his rise to power has been hailed as the first successful peasant revolt in the history of Europe and a source of inspiration for people fighting against social injustice. Number 1. Catherine I of Russia. Catherine I was born in April 1684 as Marta Skoronska in Ringen, a city in present-day Estonia. Her parents were runaway serfs. Her father was a gravedigger. Both parents died of a plague, leaving behind Marta, who was only 3, and 3 of her siblings. Marta lived with her aunt for a few years and moved to Marienburg, present-day Latvia, to live with a Lutheran pastor called Gluck. Marta served as a maid in Gluck's household. In 1702, during the Great Northern War, Russian forces invaded Marienburg, and Gluck was taken to work as a translator for a Russian diplomat and Army General Boris Sheremetev. Marta, then 18, also worked in Sheremetev's household. Sources say Marta was Sheremetev's domestic servant and mistress. Sheremetev took Marta to Russia and handed her over to Count Alexander Menshikov, a close ally and advisor of Peter I, the Emperor of Russia. It was during a visit to Menshikov's residence in the autumn of 1705 that Emperor Peter I first set eyes on Marta, then 23. Marta's ever-cheerful nature, witty gestures, and concise answers to the emperor's questions proved that she was the dependable mistress the emperor had been longing for. Peter immediately fell in love with her. Marta was brought to live in Peter's residence. She converted to the Russian Orthodox faith and was baptized as Catherine on the 28th of December 1706. The couple married a year later. Though senior military officers expressed disappointment with the emperor's involvement with an illiterate girl, the couple was very much in love. They went on to have 12 children, 2 of whom eventually ruled Russia. Emperor Peter married her again in 1712, this time more officially. On the 7th of May 1724, Catherine was crowned Empress of Russia and named co-ruler. When Peter died in 1725 without naming a successor, Catherine became the first woman to hold supreme authority in Russia. Russia enjoyed a period of peace during the reign of Catherine. She managed to significantly reduce military expenses, which was consuming a whopping 65% of the state revenue at the time of Peter. By curtailing military expenses, Catherine reduced the tax burden on the peasants, earning her the reputation of a fair ruler. She didn't need to be literate to make a good ruler. Thank you for watching. If you have a video idea, why not leave a comment below? And if we make it, we'll give you a big shout out. And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more videos on crime stories, notorious outlaws, and historical scandals.